Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. They offer free checking with industry-leading mobile banking. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
Hi, Hokie fans, and welcome into the latest edition of the Tech Sideline podcast. Today we've got Kelly Woolwine in studio. Who is Kelly Woolwine and why should you care? We'll answer those questions and a lot more about Virginia Tech NIL in episode 399 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. Welcome back. We're recording on Monday, December 16th, 2024 from our studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. Today's TSL podcast is sponsored exclusively by the Hokie Way, which has launched their annual year-end Stone by Stone campaign to support Virginia Tech NIL and local nonprofits. Last year's campaign raised over $700,000 and helped the Hokies hold on to talent like Kyron Drones, Antoine Powell-Ryland, and Bayshul Tootin. This is a critical fundraising campaign for many reasons. Visit thehokieway.org to learn more and to donate, and we'll drop the link in the video description as well. Now, the Hokie Way's goal this time is to raise $200,000, and the first $200,000 raised will be matched by a generous anonymous donor. And so far, as of this moment, let me look it up. They are 85 donations in for $25,620. So they're 1/8 of the way to the $200,000 goal. You're talking 15, 16, 17 days, $175,000. That's $10,000 a day. I've seen Hokie fans do that before, and I know you guys can do it. So I'm your host, Tech Sideline founder Will Stewart, and producing today's show is TSL Director of Media, Nick Brown. Right to my right, I've got the head of the Hokie Way, Matt Sams. What is your official job title, Matt? Executive Director of the Hokie Way. And across the way, we have the mysterious Kelly Woolwine. Kelly, welcome into the show.
Thanks for having me.
So just for you guys listening and watching, this is the first time I've ever met Kelly. I don't know much about Kelly at all. So we're going to go on this journey of discovery together. So the first thing I do is I look you up on LinkedIn. And you are a man of many hats. So when I go to people's, they're wearing one right now. So when I go to people's LinkedIn profiles, I'm used to seeing the sequential job listings. For you, you've apparently got 5 things going on right now, and I'll read to tech fans what they are. First of all, let's back up a little bit. You graduated tech in 1990, right?
Correct.
Right. What was your degree in?
Double major. It's going to sound really good. Economic major and marketing major. Minor degree in English. Right. But really all that was just an excuse to hang around campus a little longer.
How many years were you there?
5. A little victory lap for Kelly.
Nice. Did you ever go to summer school?
I did. There was a couple of summers I took some of the harder classes in the summer.
No kidding.
Because someone tipped me off that it could be a little easier way to go in the summer than taking those classes in the regular semester. So I tried that, and I think it worked.
Yeah. If I could go back and tell younger me, well, I'd tell younger me a lot of things, but one of them would be you need to spend a couple of summers in Blacksburg instead of, I was from Charlottesville. I'd go home to Charlottesville. Lame. So were you an athlete at Tech?
Not at Tech, just intramural stuff. We played a lot of basketball, intramural basketball, but I played basketball and football all my life growing up, but after, through senior year in high school, but I wasn't going Division I scholarship in either of those things, clearly. So I wanted to come to Tech and start a new journey.
Yeah. So let's get back to what I was launching into. You've got a whole bunch of things going on right now. So here's what you're listed as. Founder and president of Frontier Consulting, LLC, co-owner of Atlantic Capital Holdings, LLC, co-founder and CEO, Evolution HR USA, which is I think is the most recent, biggest thing you got going on. Founder and president of the LifeRing Foundation, and we'll get to that in a minute, and CEO of Triumph NIL. Are you actually doing all of those things now? Like, what's the breakdown there?
Well, Yes. I'm very, very fortunate. I like to use the word cross-collateralize. I learned early on in my career, you can gain a lot of ground if you try and think through that if you take this action, it can also, have this byproduct, and this byproduct. To a certain extent, a lot of those entities tie together. But at any given moment, on any given day, I'm just doing one thing, right? I'm just trying to concentrate and focus on the missions that are personal to me, and very fortunate that the professional look there, they all kind of tie together in that personal mission.
So have you got people working for all those organizations that you trust and know what the mission is and all that sort of thing?
I do. I mean, I've been very blessed in my professional career to be surrounded by men and women who really know what they're doing. Yeah. And I unfairly get a lot of credit for other people's work. I have an amazing staff at Evolution HR. They give me a lot of leeway to not have to worry about every little thing there. The Life Ring Foundation, we have an amazing director of philanthropy that's really our point there in our operational push. My wife, Jessica, does a lot of heavy lifting there. We have an awesome board and committee that is always functioning and moving as we speak. Frontier Consulting, that's really just me. That's project work that opens doors for me there. When I'm asked to help out, I can cherry pick there if I think I can be a help to a business or an organization. And then Triumph NIL, these days, I'd say that's more like a dragon to slay. We're trying to harness that bad boy right now. I'm sure we'll talk all about that.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute. So I wanted to start with, because I think of what I'm about to talk to you about, I think leads into Triumph NIL. Founder and president of the Life Ring Foundation, which you started in 2006. So tell us that story, because I know it's a personal story for you. That the Life Ring Foundation's mission is to battle pediatric cancer. Why did you start that?
Well, the foundation started, I grew up, modest background in Roanoke. I'm from Roanoke, born and raised. I was been very blessed to have some success as an entrepreneur, had a few goes at it. And in Roanoke especially, the community really embraced our efforts. The community really allowed us to succeed. The men and women of that town, a very blue collar workforce that we had in Roanoke. And the idea was just to give back, to take the success, to take the platform, the influence, whatever it may be, and try and benefit the community. In the beginning, we didn't really know where the foundation was going to be pointed. We're involved in early literacy. We had, a scholarship for single moms to Virginia Western. It could be, we've been longtime partners for the rescue mission and the Turning Point shelter. But 6 years ago, things changed there. On September 27th, 2018, at 11 a.m., my daughter Charlotte was 3 years old. My son Fox had just been born. Like, he's weeks old. We're in that exhausted, tired up all night baby stage. And we thought Charlotte had a stomach bug. And she had been unusually healthy. She had only been in the pediatrician's office for routine checkups. So we went in because we thought she had a little bug. We're there about 90 minutes. They're putting her through the ringer, testing her for strep, testing her for flu, all the things. And her abdomen really bothered her. And so the pediatrician that we saw that day, who we had never met and I have not seen since, really pushed on us to go over to Roanoke Memorial to get an ultrasound. He was thinking maybe it's appendicitis. Let's check it out. So we go get the ultrasound. Never left the hospital. By that night, we were admitted to the hospital. Probably around 2 a.m, we were told that Charlotte had hepatoblastoma. I'd never heard that word in my life. Liver cancer, pediatric liver cancer, stage 4, metastatic to both lungs, ugly, probably not going to make it. Within 36 hours, she had had probably 1 or 2 surgeries, was already starting chemo, had a port implanted, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what the word meant. So we were immediately immersed in pediatric cancer world, which, as we know now, is a very dark and somewhat invisible world. Everybody knows pediatric cancer's out there, but nobody really knows.
I don't think people want to know, Kelly.
No, they don't. And believe me, I hope that anybody listening has no clue about it and never will. It's one of those things where you don't really think about fighting kids' cancer until it's your kid fighting cancer. And that was 6 years ago. And I do want to say, for those who don't know, Charlotte's still here. She's a thriving, vibrant 9-year-old, plays soccer, goes to dance. She's an excellent student. My son Fox is now 6, but we still, we're under threat. You go there, you come from there, you're never out of the woods. We have a lot of fear, but mostly we try and feel blessed. We're in the moment. We now know how precious our time with her is. But over the last 6 years, we learned that there is a vast separation between the resources that are available for adults fighting cancer versus kids. Something happened to you or me or Matt, we could go into, there's several options here in our region, and we would get really good world-class treatment. If your kid gets diagnosed with cancer, it's a different story. And then there's no bad guy. It's not like any of the health systems here don't want to do better for children, but there's just no money. Adults outnumber kids 5-1, and so does everything else.
Yeah.
Research for kids with cancer, resources to treat kids with cancer. It's all a fraction. Adult resources here, kids resources here. And over the last 6 years, you're in a culture, pediatric cancer is a family disease. When we were diagnosed that night,
life stops. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't go to football games anymore. You don't play golf. You don't go to work. You don't have a life. It's over. Parents sit at the bedside. It affects the entire family. Siblings disappear. You disappear. We didn't see hardly anybody we knew for almost a year because we had to move to Cincinnati and be treated at Cincinnati Children's.
And that's part of what goes on. If you're an adult, you wind up at UVA, Wake Forest, Duke.
Yeah.
With a child, you got to travel states away and live there.
And so we started to see more and more families go through this. And I can't say this enough. There's not a bad guy. There's no villain in this other than pediatric cancer. And so once we got our feet under us and we were out of the hospital more than in, we just decided the mission is to help this region have better resources for fighting pediatric cancer. And so the Life Ring really got redirected. And I know you're going to ask me, NIL and Triumph and all that. About that same time, about 3 years ago, NIL started to become a subject. And having a relationship with Whit as a fan, as a donor, as a friend to the university here, Whit Babcock and President Sanson University, it was, hey, I think this NIL is going to be a thing. Let me know if I can help, as a friend to Virginia Tech. And it was very clear that it was not going to be pay for play. You can't pay athletes to play sports. You still can as of this day. They have to promote something. So, my wife, Jess, and I, we've got the perfect thing. And so it really tied together. For us, it was much bigger than just trying to win some more basketball games or football games. We wanted to do that, but it really integrated well in giving the student athletes an opportunity to promote something meaningful. And I'm so proud of the men and women here, 100% participation in helping us raise awareness for pediatric cancer, helping us raise money for pediatric cancer. It's really moved the needle. Over the last 3 years, the Life Ring Foundation is coming up, or, probably really in the last 18 months, we really have fired up the engine. We're almost at $4 million raised, and Carillion is building a new cancer center in Roanoke. Groundbreaking was about 2 weeks ago, and we're going to be able to put real resources into the pediatric cancer treatment unit there. Odds are, I would say sometime in the first quarter of this year, we're going to be hiring 7 new positions that don't currently exist in there. 7. That's nice. A lot of horsepower for this region because of the efforts. And the association with Virginia Tech and the Hokie Way and the student athletes is a big part of that.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, do you feel, and I'm sure the answer is yes, do you feel that working with the Hokie Way and promoting LifeRing using Virginia Tech student athletes, that it's really juiced you beyond what you could otherwise do and brought visibility
Absolutely.
to it? Yeah.
You know, Matt and Hokie Way and their engine, have really helped us have a platform, to shamelessly promote our cause while we, raise money for the student athletes, give them opportunity to promote something. It's been, from a pediatric cancer and LifeRing Foundation standpoint, it's been invaluable.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So, here on my list of questions is how did you get involved with Triumph NIL? But there's a secondary question that is was it your idea? Because you're a serial entrepreneur. You get ideas all the time.
About that.
I
think I might just be hyperactive.
How clearly you played a big role in starting Triumph NIL, and what's the CEO of Triumph NIL? So explain to me how that got started and how the Hokie Way came along. Go into a little bit more detail about that.
Well, I had an idea of an entity, that would be able to facilitate the business side of NIL for Virginia Tech. But also at that exact same time, some other very smart people had the exact same idea. So Nick Rush, who's a very good friend to the university, All-American Kevin Jones, everybody knows who that is, and Robin Jones. So Nick started Commonwealth NIL. I started a company called Hot Route Marketing. Yeah. And Kevin and Robin started Triumph NIL. And none of us knew about the other. But because we were trying to do the same thing at the same time, we all met and decided it was best to join forces and do this together. I think I could speak for everybody when we said that the vision was that Virginia Tech would be better off with one voice, one partner, one effort, one team, instead of, a bunch of different groups. And Nick and Kevin and Robin and the group that Triumph put together before I knew about it, I want to say a very great compliment. They put their trust in me and allowed me to be out in front. And again, get a lot of credit for their hard work. We're all still in this together.
Yeah. And that's common to see. You have a nascent industry, one that's springing up, and you have companies that come up, and it makes sense to consolidate. Like when I was a young person, it was personal computers, and there were literally at one point hundreds of companies making PCs. And they started to buy each other and combine, and you eventually whittled it down to like 4 companies, IBM, HP, and some others. So, and having followed all that, I know that the entities you just described, they each brought something different to the table. So once you combine them all under the Triumph umbrella, that made sense. So let's transition to fans becoming more aware of you because of some things that have been said about you lately. Good things by Whit Babcock, athletic director at Virginia Tech. And so I'm going to read you a quote from Whit's recent interview with Bill Roth, where Whit said, "We're really pleased with our collective and Triumph, and Kelly Woolwine serves in that general manager role now," which, based on your expression, is not a job that you asked for. And back to Whit. "When I say general manager role, he's really good with our negotiations with the prospective student athletes, with the current student athletes, with the parents, with his relationship with our compliance office, and with the coaches." And Brent Pry, in his last press conference, also mentioned you as a person who leads negotiations with athletes. How did your involvement in Triumph morph into that? Is this just a skill set you have, or
bad luck, I guess?
I imagine that's incredibly stressful, but rewarding.
I think it's important to know, a lot of fans don't know some of the structural restrictions that have led to some of this evolution. The way it was supposed to be when NIL was introduced to the college athletics world is coaches and anybody affiliated with the university was not to talk money and negotiate with student athletes. Mm-hmm. The idea was you needed a separate entity for that because it's all under the marketing umbrella, right? These are marketing deals. And I think it's no big secret. There's a lot of schools in the country that don't and have never really abided by that. But one of the many, many things that makes me proud to be affiliated with Virginia Tech is because we do it the right way. We always have, and that's in our DNA. And everybody's staying true to that. Cheating is easier than it's ever been. It's easy as falling off of a log. Witt has never wanted us to do that. Coach Pry is not willing to do that. Tim Sands doesn't want us to do that. We're not going to cheat. And so we've tried to do things with the rules change or they're absent or vague, but we try and do them the right way. We win, we lose, whatever we're going to do it in a Virginia Tech way that we can all be proud of. And so right from the very beginning, it had to be a private entity and individuals that were negotiating these marketing deals. And so Kevin, Brendan Hill, who was here, Nick did some of those early on, Robin, myself. We interfaced with the athletes and we did our best to help out the coaches. It's evolved very quickly to now what we could not possibly have foreseen, but any student athlete from any sport that is a Virginia Tech student athlete or may be now has to be negotiated with. Everyone's an unrestricted free agent at all times.
Yeah.
And so the general manager role just kind of landed there.
Yeah. I imagine that, you see it around college athletics, college football programs. Let's talk specifically football. College football programs are hiring general managers, and their role is going to be to oversee talent acquisition and retention. Do you see that? Is that the plan for something like that to happen at Virginia Tech, somebody who's actually employed by the athletic department? Because I imagine you having this, you're talking about dozens, hundreds of athletes. Do you ever get any sleep? I imagine first of all, I appreciate you coming on and doing this interview. It's the first interview you've ever done, right?
Yes.
Appreciate you carving out time, and I imagine you've got several clones running around elsewhere.
And let's do a really good job here today, so I don't have to do it again.
I imagine that although it's been stressful and time consuming, I imagine it's been pretty rewarding to get to know a lot of the athletes and their families. Give me the upside and the positive of it.
Well, I mean, I think NIL has since day one to a certain extent gotten a bad rap. By and large, the athletes, number one, are appreciative and respectful. I think that goes for most. There may be some that aren't, but it's a pleasure to work with them and their families. And I would go one further. I think the biggest thing that I've seen is that they're caught in the middle of all this.
Yeah.
They didn't ask for it to be this way. They weren't storming the castle and making demands. I think it's fair that athletes get compensated. I think what's unfair is that, I'm sorry I have to say, I haven't seen any adults step into the room to help the kids. There needs to be more order and standardization and guardrails and things like that. If it remains that whoever has the most money wins, or not wins on the field necessarily, because I think we're seeing money can't buy that.
Florida State,
but wins, the recruiting and wins and getting attention and wins and transactionally. It's the student athletes that are suffering the most.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for that. These guys are they want structure. They want to understand it. And I don't know how we get there. I'm optimistic. I'm eternally optimistic. I think that could come. But if anything, I enjoy working with the athletes. To your point, these are fine young men and women who are trying to live the dream, but unfortunately they have an influence that's been introduced to them that sadly I see it every day, that, okay, student athlete, here's your dream, and over here's the money. Which one do you want? Yeah. And that's so unfair to put a 20-year-old in that position, or a 19-year-old.
Are you starting to see with your time spent in the space, are you starting to see more and more agents showing up and getting involved in the process? Like, I imagine at the first it was the players and the athletes and their families, and now there's probably more third parties getting involved. Is there any sort of vetting process for that? I mean, you've probably seen a spectrum, right?
Yes.
And that's just something that there needs to be more control over?
Yes. Nothing against all my agent friends out there. They could be texting me as we speak. I think it, the families, a lot of the families find it awkward, when they're talking about where their son or daughter is going to get their education, or where they're going to accept a scholarship and play and chase their dream. These families didn't anticipate it having to be a business deal either. They didn't ask for that. And it's awkward for a lot of them. And the backgrounds are all over the place. I think it's a good idea to have someone help them with it if they're not comfortable. I just hope that the families are choosing wisely. I wish, that there was a way for them to understand even the process of choosing someone to help them better. But in some cases, there's a lot of people out there who are helping families and student athletes that aren't getting paid to do it. They just want to try and be of service to those families. A lot of high school coaches or trainers and things like that. Everybody's just doing their best, man. That's what I see. I don't see a criminal element out there. I don't see dark forces necessarily. It's a tsunami. And everybody is doing their best.
Yeah, it really is the wild, wild west right now. But so let's spend a couple of minutes on this. You're building the ecosystem from, let's say you're in charge and you're building it from the ground up. What sort of guardrails would you, as a guy who's on the front lines, what sort of guardrails would you like to see in place? Because right now it's just do whatever you want, whenever you want. What's the perfect system, which I think we'll eventually get to? How would you like it to be?
Oh, gosh.
Contracts? If you go to school, you have to be there for 2 years?
How long did you say we had?
No, that's a big question.
I think, I would like to think there's a lot of people smarter than me trying to figure this out. But, just a few biggies. I think it's fair that the athletes get paid, but in all the business contracts I've ever been a part of, there's two sides to it, right? And there's a term and a time frame, and there's deliverables and all of those things. I think the biggest thing that needs to happen from a sports standpoint is one portal window for a sport. We have a December window that's going on now, but there's another one in April. So, a lot of schools are potentially going to spend a lot of money January, February, and March to pay student athletes that then can walk out on them in April. Yeah. And so one of two things is going to happen. A school is going to say, that's just the cost of doing business, and maybe they can afford that. Or you might see clawbacks and fighting over money. And you signed a long-term deal. You didn't do the deliverables. We want that January, February, March money back. That's a big, nasty pothole to me. One portal window makes sense. If everybody's an unrestricted free agent once a year, okay, that's fine. And then I think there needs to be some sort of standardization. I don't know, salary cap. I mean, the pro sports all have salary caps. Some way to control the train, because it's kind of ugly to me that there's a very small number of programs with an exorbitant amount of money and horsepower that are driving things. And I'm not begrudging them. We're talking bad. Please don't attack me, whoever those programs are, because I wish I had it.
You wish you had the 25
I
million,
wish I had that kind of horsepower. But and you can't blame them for using what they have. They have the resources. But there is some very, very big side effects that affect the whole rest of the country in every single program. The appearance of those resources has created a gravitational pull that all the student athletes are hovering and buzzing around that small amount of resources. And there's not a lot of activity for all the other schools right now until when the music stops, whoever gets those chairs and gets those offers, and then everybody else, then, okay, where are we now? So some way to control that a little bit would be helpful if it's a salary cap or whatever. And then, quite frankly, this whole thing was supposed to be so that student athletes can get paid and get their piece of the revenue that's out there in college football. But truth of the matter is, it looks like to me that 80% of the student athletes that play college football won't get any of it. It's all going to be right here.
The top guys.
Whether it's the top guys or the top schools or whatever. I mean, think about the number of programs that are out there that literally could be left holding the bag. You know, all over the country, I've talked to hundreds of student athletes in a very short period of time. It's a blitz. And a lot of those student athletes feel resentful right now as if they have been mistreated by the organizations they're with. Some of our own guys feel that way. You know, I was here and, you know, you didn't pay me but this, or you didn't pay me, because they're hearing now some of these numbers. Yeah. And they think that their school or organization was holding out on them, taking advantage of them, sandbagging them. They're very bitter about it. And I get it.
Through nobody's fault.
Through nobody's fault. You know, I don't know what you do about that, but there's a lot of negativity among the student athletes because of that disparity. Yeah. And you're going to have a program who's going to bring a guy in for $700,000 in the next 7 days. And on the other side of the line for him is a guy that's been slaving away at that same university for $75,000 a year. How happy is he going to be when he sees that? Yeah.
Wow, so much to unpack there. You talked about salary caps like they have in the NFL. Isn't that sort of the purpose of the House settlement, that each school can now spend up to can share up to $20.5 million of revenue? And folks, that is revenue sharing. That's not NIL. It's different. I think and this is one of the things I want to talk about. There's some feeling amongst fans that Virginia Tech's going to pay the NIL now. I don't need to do that. If you look at the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, they have athletes that play for them that get paid certain salaries. And then those athletes can go sign NIL deals separate from that, promote products. You know, that's how a lot of them make more money than they actually make playing the sport. And isn't it true that in college, that's what you're going to wind up with now? There's a $20.5 million pot of revenue sharing. And there is still a need for NIL organizations to raise money and create NIL opportunities above and beyond the revenue sharing from the athletic department. Correct?
Absolutely correct. I think there's a misconception. Any university, I don't care what it is. Everybody who is going to fund rev share or NIL in college sports, it's fan driven. Yeah. It's the shareholders, and even the smaller group of programs that I was referring to that are very well heeled right now. That's all because of donors, boosters, and fans, shareholders investing in that business. Mm-hmm. There's just no other way. We will have what the people who love Virginia Tech give us.
Yeah. And that is a good moment to once again promote the Hokie Way's Stone by Stone campaign. Visit thehokieway.org.
Please.
And donate.
Please.
And actually, as we're sitting here, another donation came in, and you're up close to $26,000 now. Now, it's not because we're live. It's just because that just happened to come in while we were doing this. So let me tell you a way I think about it, and tell me if you agree with this. In the current landscape, by the way, revenue sharing doesn't kick in until next year. Raising NIL funds is still important for getting through the next 6 months and, of course, beyond. But here's the way I think of it. Let's say you've got school A that raises $15 million a year for NIL funds. That's a lot of money. That's one of the top in the country. That's
How much did you say?
$15 million. You're doing very well. Let's say Virginia Tech, and I'm making this number up, folks, has $8 million. And let's say that other school has $16 million. So that other school has a 2-to-1 advantage over Virginia Tech. Once revenue sharing begins, Virginia Tech has $20.5 million plus $8 million of NIL money. So that's a pool of $28.5 million. The other school has 20.5 plus 16. That's a pool of $36.5 million. So it helps close, the revenue sharing helps close the gap. That school now is $36.5 million versus Virginia Tech's $28.5 million, which sounds a lot better than 16 to 8. Is that a fair and accurate way to look at things and kind of give people that perspective?
I think that is, I would call that a general dynamic. You got some good homework there. I think it is important to distinguish that right now in January to June, it's strictly all NIL. Yep. And then July, rev share for everybody is a fiscal calendar that will start in July to the following June of 26, right? And so it is what we're up against right now is NIL head to head. And the fans will read into the portal activity that they see, and I don't blame them because they don't have a lot to go on. They couldn't possibly see what's going on in all of these locker rooms and administrative buildings and homes where this is going down. But what can you read into that? How do you judge a man for if our offer is here and some other school's offer is here? I promise you, that is not a kid running away from here because culture is bad or because we don't know what we're doing, or not even because he doesn't love Virginia Tech. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it takes for a guy to not do that, but I hope enough of them do, because, and I can tell you, I want to speak to the fans directly on this. I see what some fans will put these student athletes through on the message boards and,
social media, Twitter,
whether it's our quarterback or positions. You guys got to understand, every single athlete that was on that field last year was here because they love Virginia Tech. And every single one of them can leave here and get more money. They're not here because they don't have choices. They're here because they love Virginia Tech. And I really wish our fans and all our supporters would love them back, because we don't have the money to buy our way through this. We've got a really good budget, as you pointed out, and we're going to be competitive. But at no point soon will there be a day that any of our student athletes couldn't leave and get some more money.
Yeah.
So when we take the field in the spring and when we take the field in the fall, I promise you, every man wearing that helmet is going to be here because he loves and believes in Virginia Tech, and because he loves and believes in the coaching staff and the administration and what we're all committed to doing.
I believe that there is a human resistance to change, that an athlete who is here and is playing here, has a starting position, has a good situation, wants to stay here, would rather stay here and not uproot their entire life and go into a situation where they don't know their teammates, they don't know a new coach. So I've always maintained, I'm sure you agree with this, that when it comes down to money, you don't necessarily have to win. You just have to be competitive. You can't be in a situation where you're offering $300,000 and some school's offering $2 million. You're not going to win that. But if a school's offering $1 million and you're offering $600,000, you're competitive, and that's more likely for them to stay here. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's what we should be able to do, is be competitive. And we have to, in my career, my background's not football, it's business, but in the business world, I've always been in people-centric businesses, meaning the human resource is the resource by and large. And I have always believed, and that's been validated over time, that men and women who they want to be there. They believe in your mission. They believe that your mission aligns with their personal mission, that type of want to is more powerful than any resume or skill sets. And I hope that plays out this way in this organization, because the men that will be here on our football team are going to be here because they want to.
So a couple of questions that the guys from Tech Sideline wanted me to ask, very, very specific about dealing with the marketplace and negotiating with athletes and their families. How do you go about determining market value when negotiating with a specific athlete? I imagine it's difficult. I imagine there's a lot of untrue stuff floating around out there. I'll stop babbling and leave the question. How do you go about determining market value and what you should offer and negotiate?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely correct. I do want to validate that 99.999% of what everybody's hearing out there is not true. On the flip side, I'll say the truth may be stranger than fiction. The stuff we're seeing. And, Mike Tyson's quote really fits in here too. I mean, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. We try and I mean, we have really good analytics, and we're trying to be very smart with budget decisions and roster decisions and what we're offering. Because again, we want to be smart with the university's money. We want to be efficient, make sure everyone benefits from that, and that we're as competitive as we can be. But all that's really been shattered. I haven't, in this first week of the portal, really detected a market standard, so to speak, any sort of valuation method. If a school in that small group of schools has a need, then they set the market, they set the bar, and they're going to have it. And the only way they're not going to have it is if you beat their number, and there's your market. It's capitalism at its finest. Yeah. Hopefully a few more days, another week or two of the portal, that may play out different.
Right now it's all bad news, right?
I mean, it
looks like bad news.
Yeah. I'll share this with you. I believe as of this morning, we saw, let's call it roughly 2,100 FBS football players in the portal. I think 68 players have signed with a new team. Yeah. So we'll see who actually accepts offers and signs and what. It's musical chairs at the highest level. Now, when Kelly, the music stops, people will have a seat or they won't.
Let me jump in here and do the math for people. 2,100 FBS, there's roughly 130 FBS teams. That's 15 players for a football team. We're just talking football here.
Correct.
Which is where we are. Right?
Yeah, which is roughly where Virginia Tech is.
Correct. Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, looking down the road a little bit, when the House settlement kicks in and there's revenue sharing from the athletic department to the athletes, and then there's still NIL, there's a couple things going on. Number one, will Virginia Tech have to publicly disclose where all $20.5 million, or any school really, where all $20.5 million of that money is going? We're paying this guy. Don't
know.
Yeah. But NIL is changing because anything that is over $600 does have to be publicly disclosed, correct?
That is the current threat. That's what a lot of
not
it remains
finalized
to be
yet,
seen.
Right? Yeah.
But I think that the idea is that you put a clamp on NIL so that it's not just full blown chaos. Most money wins, and you introduce a rev share salary cap. And hopefully that kind of levels the playing field. unfortunately, because that doesn't begin till July of this year, even if it passes, NIL still kind of rules the day right now.
Yeah.
Now, at this time next year, going into the first half of 2026, it could look very different, and it could look a lot more orderly by then.
Yeah. Well, and there's also going to be a third party that is going to examine all NIL deals and make sure that they're true NIL and true market value. And I would imagine for a lot of schools that are throwing a lot of money around, that's making them a little nervous. Is that backup left tackle really worth the $800,000 you're paying him? Is he really doing NIL work that adds up to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's no comment on that. But and I do want to say, in case a question doesn't prompt it, I have to say this because people just don't know. From Tim Sands all the way down to the staff level in our athletic building, our Hokieway team, and Matt and his guys, everyone wants to win. And they're committed and clinging to the idea that not only can we survive, but thrive. No one is planning to hang on. We're planning to win. And I don't think there's anyone on this campus working harder day and night to win than Whit Babcock. To come up with the budget that we have and to come up with the resources that we have and to create an environment where we can try and hang with these big brands is only because of him and Coach Pry and his staff. I mean, if anybody thinks those guys don't want to win or take a leisurely approach to this, one of the greatest blessings that I personally have in being involved is seeing that work. And in my career, I bet on hard work all day long. Where there's hard work, there's generally success. And maybe it doesn't happen as fast as we, the shareholders and the fans, would like. But if anybody thinks that there's not a ton of hard work and want to in those guys or this administration, they just don't know. And I'll say this for the athletes. They're not running out of here spewing venom, and they're not bad guys. They're not unwanted, and neither are we. This is a tough, unprecedented climate, and everybody needs a little grace. And these athletes, I admire the way they are handling themselves and giving us a chance. I admire the way they are handling the bait that's being offered to them. I don't judge any one of them for the decisions that they're making. And I think our coaches are staying poised and working their tails off to make the athletes feel as appreciated as they can. I just really hope the fans know and appreciate how hard their program is working to deliver and keep them happy.
Yeah, good. Matt, I'm going to wake you up from your slumber over there.
Sure.
Are you feeling, because I'm feeling this, or I think we're just primarily seeing this on places like social media and the message boards and things like that. Are you feeling NIL from the very beginning has been a tough pill for a lot of fans to swallow, and we've done our part in trying to educate people on it. Are you feeling as more and more time goes by, particularly with a football season that was 6-6, are you feeling more and more resistance to NIL fundraising efforts?
I think it's multifaceted. I think there's some fatigue. We're going through a couple of cycles of year-to-year NIL work and donor reliance. But I also think there's some confusion, which is why conversations like this are so important, because if folks think that rev share and house sub and all that stuff's going to change the dynamic immediately, that's just not the case. And a lot of folks around here say we can be as good as we want to be. And if Virginia Tech fans want to be good, we've got to invest in each other and invest in athletics. So there's multiple ways to do that. There's the Hokie way, there's Triumph, there's the Hokie Club. We just need people to be engaged. And I think in terms of your question, back to your question more directly, what are we seeing? Yeah, I think there's some fatigue. There's some uncertainty, but positivity breeds more engagement, right? So if we can see a good ball game performance and see some things happen over the next few months that are positive, I think our fans will come back around a little bit.
And one of the directions this is headed in, and I know that there's no specific answer for this yet. Ultimately, this will be brought in under the umbrella of the Hokie Club. Part of it will be, and you will be able to donate to NIL and receive Hokie Club points for that. Is that what you guys are pushing for?
Theoretically, yes. I mean,
yes.
There's a lot of questions around some of that stuff, and we get those questions a lot, uncertainty there. But that's the long term, or I guess midterm to long term view of how it should work. But right now, we're just kind of how we've been, and we'll see where the next few months take us.
Kelly, back to you. How do you, Triumph, and the coaching staffs, various coaching staffs, not just football, but other sports, how do you manage relationships year-round with the athletes and not just in the off-season portal windows? I imagine that's becoming a bigger and bigger effort as time goes by.
It is, and I would say, again, the coaches have their hands full. Think about how this subject is dominating all the news that's fit to print in college sports right now. Well, the coaches are living that on a daily basis, trying to figure out what to say to the athletes, how to manage the locker room, how to keep those. This is the biggest distraction that has hit a college football locker room in the history of college football. I mean, this is bigger than girls and drugs and partying. I mean, you've never seen a distraction like this, because the only thing that a student athlete in a Division I program, it's affecting him because he's getting paid. He's changed now. He's pissed off because he's not getting paid.
Yeah.
Or he's really concerned or distracted by what this guy's getting paid. They're human. And it's so inconsistent that how can they not be distracted? And the coaches everywhere are trying to figure out how to deal with that. We're trying to help the best we can. But I would say, I have the least to add to that, because I don't think right now anybody likes me, right? I don't tell anybody what they want to hear all day long. Right. I can't match all of those offers, so all I do is disappoint. So we try and be a positive influence to the student athletes. We try and remind them there's a bigger picture. Don't sell your dream. Cling to the trajectory you've been on. It's bigger than right now. We're trying those things, and the coaches are getting better and better at that, but this is all new.
It appears to me that there's go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, the other side of that perspective, seeing it in the weeds on the front lines from the activation perspective. Kelly's team, Mitch and team, there's obvious relationships. There's obvious connections there that I think play out throughout the year that in a positive way. Kelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that piece of it does have some impact that is a positive, whether it's appearances or TV commercials, social media, whatever it may be. There's good relationships there. If you see those things and observe them, I think there's impact and there's value. I just wanted to say that because I think it's important.
And the student athletes, they're showing up for everything we ask for community engagement, not because they have to, but because they want to.
Yes.
I mean, even right now, today, a guy could be on his way out the door, and he doesn't shortchange us on that. Right before I walked in here, I was sitting with a young man and his family, a portal visitor, and they asked the questions on their own, not knowing anything about how NIL works here. What's your community engagement like?
Really?
And so we talked about all this, and the conversation was much more about what the young man could do to benefit the community than it was about a paycheck. It's not all bad.
Yeah.
I mean, these are good people out there just going through something tough.
Yeah. And we talked about the Life Ring Foundation, but there's 8 other nonprofits. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Matt? They're involved, and I'm sure you've seen a boost with all of them.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this before on the pod, I think before, but to a person, male or female, our student athletes show up and do their work for us, for our nonprofits, willingly and with enthusiasm, not because they have to. And I think it's a differentiator. I'm glad to hear about that recruit being interested, because I think that's what we're trying to amplify and exude is this is the way that you can support your communities around Virginia Tech, and it's a cool, unique thing.
Yeah. So folks, remember, there's more to your donation to the Hokie Way than just, money that goes to student athletes. It benefits the charities and the nonprofits. And also, I've completely left out the fact that it's tax deductible.
Correct. It
is December 16th. And if you're looking for another tax deduction, contribute to the Stone by Stone campaign at thehokieway.org. Gentlemen, I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Is there anything else you guys want to add that I may have left out? Kelly, you're nodding.
I want to add one thing. It's a plea to the fans in Hokie Nation. I mean, we need you. Maybe the results on the football field this year in particular were not what we all wanted. Losses hurt. We want to win every game. But I would hang in there. Everybody is challenged in a different way than they used to be. There is no other way. If we withhold our support from Virginia Tech will suffer. I mean, there's nobody who's going to learn a lesson from that. Yeah. If you can do it, we need you because it is head to head right now, and it helps. There's never been a time like this where the fans have more power to affect the outcome than they do right now.
Yeah, and I know, Matt, that you guys you have your larger donors that tote a lot of the freight. But what Tech Sideline fans have already been have always been good about is bringing the numbers to where their contributions add up. And when their contributions add up, what I'm saying, that's code for if you support this effort, there will be a player on the team next year that otherwise would not have been there, and he'll make a play and he'll do something beneficial for the team that if you don't support the Stone by Stone campaign, he might be doing that for somebody else next year. So that's my direct pitch to the fans is you can make a difference. And I've made that pitch a ton of times.
Yeah. I mean, there's guys in the portal right now, and the fans that follow this, they know who they are.
Yeah.
And believe me, there's nobody out there that we're not talking to. So if we end up on the field out here on Labor Day weekend or some subsequent weekends after that, and a guy makes life miserable for us on Saturday, and you're up in the stands asking the question, why didn't we get that guy? Remember this conversation.
Right. It is a team effort.
There's quick math to be done. 65,000 people times $10. We're doing some good work there. And so it's
$650,000. And depending upon, that'll get you 2 or 3 good players, might get you 1 great player. That's up to you guys, Kelly. That's not for me to figure out. All right, guys, appreciate you coming on. And again, donate to the Stone by Stone campaign. Go to thehokieway.org. Let's get those numbers up. 200,000 will be matched by a generous anonymous donor. And thanks for your support. And guys, thanks for being on for this episode of the Tech Sideline podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Go Hokies.